Welcome to Disruptive Capitalists, the show where purpose-driven entrepreneurs and bold investors share how they're reshaping the world by investing time and money in a way that improves lives and creates wealth. So let's get to it. Hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining us for another great episode of the Disruptive Capitalist podcast, where we talk about making a difference in the world with our time, money, and effort in a way that kind of goes against the grain of typical capitalism that's just out there to make a buck. So my guest today is Dionne Payn, and she is the founder of Women for Homes, a company whose mission is to inspire 1 million women to invest $5,000 to end homelessness by 2030. Dionne has over 10 years in the property industry, has developed affordable housing projects, raises funds for ethical property developments, and has helped over 40 investors achieve double-digit returns through property. And you have a book that you've written called Ethical, ETHICAL, Property Investing, and you regularly write and speak about the topic. Thank you so much for joining the show, Dionne.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So where are you located?
I am based in a little town called Mullumbimby, and it is very close to Byron Bay on the east coast of Australia. And it's a lovely location. It's about 10 hours north of Sydney, 2 hours south of Brisbane. So it's got a nice mix of beach and mountains and lush greenness. Yeah, it's beautiful. Really.
Yeah, sounds amazing. I need to come visit already. All right. So tell us a little bit more about yourself. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Okay. I could give you the short version, or I could give you the really long version. Let me start with how I came to Australia and a bit about my background. So I was born in the UK to Jamaican parents. They were very, religious, Pentecostal Christian. And so that gave me a good grounding in being of service, having faith in something bigger than myself. And also with the sort of racism that my parents and grandparents faced when they first moved to the UK, it also taught me that I needed to work hard. And, I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth, so I had to rely on my own wits to be able to get ahead. So I did all the right things, and I went to university and I did a PhD. And I loved that journey. I loved that journey through academia. But when I got to what I thought was the pinnacle of that, it just felt very hollow. It wasn't what I expected. So by that point, I'd actually moved to Australia. I moved before I started my PhD. I did my PhD out here. And I was childbearing age. So I thought, okay, I'm going to figure out what I want to do. I'm going to have kids first and then figure out what I want to do later. And having kids was glorious. I've got two beautiful humans, a boy and a girl. And so that was really wonderful. And I got to experience staying at home with them in their early years. So that has been such a beautiful gift. But with that comes a challenge of, because I didn't have a career to fall back on when I left. I did, but like I said, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And we were in one of the most unaffordable locations in Australia at that time. Beauty comes at a price, right? So I just, we were on one income. My husband was working, I was home with the kids. And I just thought, I just want to be able to buy a home. I want to be able to buy a beautiful rural property where there's lots of space, kids can run around. We can't do that on one income. How about if we learn the game of property, understand how to play it so we can get what we want? And so that's how I ended up in property development. And the first few deals that I did were with a joint venture partner. So he basically had lots of cash but no time. We had lots of time and not much cash. So it was a really good partnership. And that was my first lesson, actually, that a mentor of mine talks about the illusion of limited resources. So we could have just sat back and gone, oh, well, we don't have money, so it's not going to work for us. We're not going to get into development. But we figured out a way that we could. And so that lesson also reminds me of how creative property can be. And when you get it right, that creativity can be transformative for so many people. When it's done badly, it's just very extractive. But right back then, my thoughts weren't about extraction or affordable housing or anything like that. It was just like, we just want to get ahead.
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so we did
Just want to get ahead.
We did some small renovations and subdivision projects. That were the first few projects we did. And then we did a larger project, which happened to be an affordable housing project. And I didn't do it out of altruism. I did it because I was looking at the numbers and thinking, we are going to win big on this one. But then as it unfolded, and one of the first things that we did, and sort of developer 101, which you would know, is that you need to make a 20% profit margin on your projects. And so when I looked at the numbers and did the feasibility and realized that actually we could make way beyond that, I was like, this is gold. We need to get partners involved and let's make this happen. So that was where I started on that project. I then wanted to make sure that, I wasn't just shooting into the wind. There was a real case for this. And so I put down a small deposit on the land and then went to the market and said, hey, is anybody interested in this? And I did this in a couple of ways. Number one, I did it through the real estate agent. So they just did like a pre-marketing campaign and we had some beautiful renders drawn up. And then I took those renders to my friends group on Facebook and said, hey, this is what I'm looking at starting. Would anybody be interested? And the very first person that replied and said, we need to talk, ended up being the very first person that bought one of those properties. And what happened for her was that she got a small inheritance from her father. She never expected to be able to afford to buy in the area because at that time, house prices were, the median house price was about $600,000, whereas we were able to deliver these for $350,000. And it wasn't an apples to apples comparison because we were doing 60 square meter, one bedroom townhouses, whereas we were, the $600,000 were more like your 3 or 4 bedroom freestanding homes. But what it meant for my friend who was a teacher was that she got a start on the property ladder. And it wasn't just her. There were other, nurses, ambulance drivers, police. I think there was a headmaster of a school. So all of these were able to purchase their homes to be able to occupy them. And then the really cool thing about it was that in the development approval, there was a stipulation that 3 of the homes had to be affordable housing and they had to be managed by a community housing provider. So in that sense, we were able to provide homes for people on very low incomes as well. So I got to see how you can make affordable housing work. I got to see who the partners were that needed to be involved in that to make that happen. And I got to see that actually when those partners came to the table, because of those government grants that they were able to get, the numbers didn't actually change. So anybody that bought those properties as an investment, because they were head leased by the community housing provider that provided the homes to those on very low incomes, because of the government grants that they were getting to subsidise the rents, it just meant that everybody got to win out of that situation. So that that project, we finished it, but it was like honestly crawling to the finish line on that one because I fell out with my JV partners, the builder went broke, it was just hideous. And I was just stressed to the max about all of that. But there was something that it lit in me, which was, okay, put all of the crappy stuff aside. We made a 25% per annum return on our investments, and we did something really meaningful for the community. And once I connected those two things, I just thought, I cannot do property in any other way. And so it really spoke to that being of service that has always been part of my life through my religious upbringing. But it also spoke to, you can do good and make money at the same time. And just once I got that, I just had to tell everybody about it. And I really do believe that if everybody that wanted to invest in property decided to invest into affordable and sustainable housing, we would not have a housing crisis. And
Agreed.
people would still get really great returns from doing that as well.
Agreed. You've hit on so many things, from all the things that can go wrong in these projects. And that's why there is risk in investing. The operator, like if I invest my money with you, you may do everything correct, but the contractor fails, or
Mm,
the lender has issues, or there's storms, or there's a tidal wave. There's just so many things that can go wrong. COVID can shut down manufacturing and we can't get the goods,
yeah.
and but at the end, like you worked super hard and you still get it across the finish line despite your developer going broke and having to change all these things. And anytime government's involved, it always makes it slower, more complicated. Um, but they shore up your returns, which is great. And, it's better for investors. And so I, I love it. And you make money doing something good. That's what we're all about here. It's all about, like, we can disrupt the way people do capitalism. You can invest and make money. You can love money, but do good for your communities. You can do good for the people around you. You can take care of others and just be a good human.
Yeah.
That doesn't have to be all about the numbers. So that experience changed you. And ever since then, what have you been up to?
Well, it was a bit of a rocky road actually, because after that experience, I just thought, right, joint venture partners, never again, never going to do that again. I'm going to go all out on my own. And that was a disaster because you can't wear all of those hats.
You can't.
Um, and so I burnt out, and then COVID hit. So when COVID happened, that was actually the most blessed thing that could have happened to me, because it
Yeah.
really forced me to stop and look at, well, this isn't working for me. I'm stressed, and I'm not being the best version of myself. I'm not really being there for my family, and all of this started because I wanted something better for myself and my family, right? So in that time, and actually just before COVID, I met a developer who ended up being my business partner. And I remember talking to him and saying, I really want to do affordable housing. I can raise money, because all of my deals were joint venture deals. So somebody invested in me and invested in those projects. So I was like, I can raise money, and I can raise money for you as long as you're doing affordable and sustainable housing. And he said, yeah. And so we worked together for a few years, and I was raising capital for him. And then then I thought, look, I'll raise capital for other people. And I'm so glad I made that move, because I get to see all of these different types of projects. So, that developer has got into co-living. So he's building 72 co-living apartments. So they're smaller than, sort of regular apartments, but essentially it's providing an affordable space with all of the facilities. And in terms of the numbers and the return on investment and how it works for investors, it's that win-win-win. So investors win, tenants win because they're paying an affordable rent, which means that they can save, build up their capacity, and then move into something that's more suited to them. And it just works. And he's doing it in a way that's very sustainable as well. So the planet gets to win. So, getting to see that, getting to see other developers that are creating eco villages, over 55s villages, retrofitting old apartment buildings, making them more energy efficient, resource efficient, and then and then renting those out as affordable housing. Shared equity schemes. I don't know if you have that term over in the US, but it's basically, in this case, the developer is leaving their profit to help homeowners who have a very small deposits where they can get a bank loan. And so the developer is saying, okay, well, I will spot you the rest of that. So I get to sit at this beautiful vantage point and see all of these different types of projects that are happening all across the housing continuum as well. So there's social housing or public housing. There's developers that are doing that. And those developers are community housing providers, which are funded by the government. So I just, from this vantage point, I just cannot see how we cannot end homelessness. It's just, everybody's doing small bits, but collectively it is just beautiful. And so it's not reliant on one model is going to save everything. It's saying, okay, well, this group of committed people are doing things at their level, and so that's providing opportunities for us to learn to be able to scale those types of projects. So that's what I'm doing in one aspect of my business. And in another aspect of my business, I really wanted to look at why women were disproportionately affected by homelessness. And so the biggest thing there is it's not the lack of education, because there's a lot of education, but it's more about the making it relevant to the person so it lands for them, and also raising awareness of the systemic barriers that are happening and the biases that are happening towards women. Because what is happening at the moment is that nobody has an understanding of that until it's too late and it's happened to them. So, case in point, I run a podcast called the Financially Empowered Women Podcast, and I bring on women speakers, women guests, who are speaking about topics around superannuation, lowering debt, buying property, that kind of thing. And this lady was telling me that she was a marketer in the sort of 90s and early 2000s, and she worked for superannuation companies or pension companies. And the marketing material that she was putting out was talking about the compounding effect of super. So she realized early on in her 20s that she had to be putting more than the government was putting, or more than her employer was putting towards her super. She continued doing that all the way through, having had time out to raise a family, even though one of her children was special needs, so needed more attention. And so her super balance is actually larger than her husband's, even though he's continuously worked all that time. And I remember hearing that story and just thinking, why didn't anybody tell me that? Because with that awareness, I may have made a different choice. Yeah. And so this is what I see for women as well. With that awareness, they can make different choices. So really, there's the education component of it, which is to prevent homelessness in the first place by raising that awareness. And then on the other side, I'm working on a fund which everyday women can invest into from $5,000. And that money goes to investing into affordable, sustainable and inclusive homes, and earns them a target of 10% per annum on their investment. So they get the above market returns that are generally reserved for, the wealthy, and it's just everyday women that get to access this. So I see that we're able to tackle homelessness from two ends here.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, and I can tell you have too. It's like, how do you end homelessness? How do you end poverty? And I spent a little over a decade in global health and working in some of the poorest countries on the planet. And I just, over and over again, I realized it came back to the home. It came back to our house where we grow up. And if you're if you're homeless, nothing matters more than a home. If you're living in a home that is abject poverty, mud hut, terrible living, or roaches or creatures are crawling on you. And I don't know, in Australia, maybe the kangaroos are beating you up at night.
No, but I can relate to the roaches.
Yeah.
Horrid.
But, it's like, how do you think about anything else other than just staying alive? And you're not thinking about education, or maybe you're trying to get out, but what can you do to get out? Like, you're stuck.
Yeah.
And
you can't be what you can't see either. So if you don't have a good role model of what it means to live in a home and feel really comfortable and confident and to be the best version of yourself, then when you leave home and you try and recreate that, where's the role models for that?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what we've been working on for a while. Is like, how do we help them see a vision of who they can become? And really, at least in the US, if you want to go get a coach or a mentor, it costs a lot of money. A lot of money in some cases. I know guys that are paying 500 grand a year for their mentor, or 150 grand a year for their mentor. I can't afford that. And if you're in abject poverty, you ain't got two nickels. So it's not possible.
Mm.
So tell me, why is it you do what you do?
I think like it just boils down to one word, equality. I really believe in equality. And, you know, growing up in the UK, I did not face the racism that my parents experienced, but it was there, you know, it was
Mhm.
sort of under the radar a little bit. Um, but I never got why, you know, there was a difference in people just because of the color of their skin, or, you know, why some people got ahead, and, you know, because they may have had parents to help them get ahead, and other people that didn't have those parents to help them get ahead. You know, like it just didn't make sense to me. It's like, well, when we're born, we all come out the same. We all come out naked, and when we die, we all go naked. Well, maybe not naked, but do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah.
we turn
Some
to
people.
dust, right? So
Yeah.
we come in and we go out in the same way as equals. But it's just what's in between people's ears that determines, you know, how other people are treated. And that just doesn't sit well with me. And so, and you know, like I do talk about my upbringing and my upbringing in the church. I'm learning more and more how important it was for me, and it's not about being a good person. It's more about just going, oh gosh, how can I help? When I see somebody that's suffering, how can I help?
Hmm.
And I just, it's that thing of not being able to look away um, when I see that, or just not being able to forget. And look, at the end of the day, I want to be able to sleep well at night. So property development, it's a great vehicle for creating wealth, but it does widen that inequality if we let it.
Hmm.
And I've just tapped into it can be a great leveler, and that's what I want my legacy to be. And legacy is a funny word because we kind of think of, you know, like grand tombstones and things like that. You know, here
Yeah.
lies this amazing person. It's not
Yeah.
about that, but just when I go, and when my you know, my kids and my grandkids and great grandkids, when they think of me, I just want them to think of me as being a good human. And to me, being a good human is helping other people.
That's it. I love that. I love the one word equality. You know, for me, I grew up in rural Oklahoma, right? Dead center of the United States, just down a dirt road from a Native American reservation. So here you got all these Native Americans behind this fence. And, you know, they go to public school and everything else, but just the seeing their condition. I was dirt poor too on half, you know, quarter mile down the road. But just, it was just remarkable. And then, you know, everybody was poor, farm country, etc. But it was still remarkable, even American poor, and then they are way farther down. And
Mm,
I I think a lot about that. And I think, you know, when I go to you go to other countries, and you can see on one side just abject poverty, just the bottom of the bottom of the bottom, and you'll see a, you know, Mercedes G-Wagon driving through over here on the side with some aid workers in it or something, and you just think, we're not figuring it out. We're not fixing it.
no. And it's interesting. I was thinking of your the name of your podcast, Disruptive Capitalists. Um, there's part of me that recognizes that what we're talking about is a change in the system, or a completely new system, and that
Mhm.
there's certain members of the existing system that don't want things to change because it's working for them.
Mhm.
Um, and so often I get really, I'm just fascinated by, we don't have to we don't have to buy into that. Like we don't have to. If the majority of the population just went, you know what, we're not going to buy iPhones anymore. We're going to eat from home rather than going to McDonald's. We have the power to make that change. and yet we don't. And that fascinates me because I find, and look, I'm not perfect at this either. I'll have a cheeky
Sure.
little serve of fries every once in a while from McDonald's or a cup of
Yeah.
tea.
Yeah.
Um, but it's just this thing of we do have the power to change these systems by not buying into what we're being served. I'm having a very interesting conversation with my 16-year-old daughter at the moment. She wants to get Snapchat. We've resisted social media so far, but she's turning 16 in a couple of weeks. She wants Snapchat. And everything I've heard about Snapchat just makes me just go, oh, there's no way.
Yeah.
And you know, I've got her friends trying to convince me that it's not that bad and they can regulate themselves. But then I had an insight of, well, why are we trying to regulate ourselves against an organization that is trying to get us addicted? It does not make sense. Like, why are we trying to modify our behavior to, you know, sort of be part of this system, which is really extractive? It's really extractive in terms of attention, in terms of sanity and mental health. But why are we trying to modify ourselves to fit that when we could just say no? So that's the hard line that I get to take with my 16-year-old. But
Yeah.
it's the same for all of these things. We can just say no, and that's the power that we have. And we can look for different systems. We can look for different ways, and that's the power that we have. And so my whole thing is just to remind people that we do have this power within ourselves, and we can change things. And often when I talk about homelessness, I can see people kind of go, it's impossible. You can't end homelessness. I'm not saying that I can do it by myself, but
No.
it's just that
Yeah.
thing of like, it is not impossible. Like, it's just a system which isn't working, and we can tweak this. Well, tweaking the system is hard because it's a big system. It's very well entrenched, but we can change that system. And I really do believe that we can do that if we have the will and the way. And one of the things about the homelessness issue and the housing affordability issue is that it's no longer reserved for just the few. More and more people are seeing the inequality of this. And if we don't sort this out sometime soon, it's just going to lead to massive civil unrest. And as you mentioned, the home is so important. If you've got so many people that are stressed and struggling to be able to afford a home and to put food on the table, that is going to lead to massive unrest. And that works for the tech companies because they can just keep people sucked into their phones. But
Oh yeah. Yeah.
that's not life.
Civil unrest is great for the news media. I mean, they love that. That's how they make money. Clicks. The more clicks they can get, the better. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's why they just spill so much craziness, because that's what gets the clicks. Like, I only click on things if it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Like, what? I'm going to click on that. And
Yeah.
then the article's about something else, or they just make stuff up now, right? It's just,
That's been happening for a long time.
it's been happening for a long time. And it's just, I mean, it's so pervasive, but I, I love that you're trying to upend this system that's been in place for 100 years, longer. And it's like, that's been my mission is there's a way for us to make a difference in the world and make money in the process. That's why we have to disrupt the notion that our grandparents had, that you go to work, you make a buck, you put it in the stock market,
Mm.
or your parents that, they you only invest for a return. Like, what other reason is there? Well, the other reason is to make a difference. And if you're a good person, but you're investing in something that supports evil deeds, like, are you really that good of a person if your money's going to
War.
war?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I was in the military. I've been in Afghanistan. I've been to war. That sucks. We don't need to do that. There's
No.
way better ways, way better ways. So you know, it's become my life mission. And I love that it's your life mission too. It's so wonderful.
Thank you.
So,
It's nice to meet and talk to somebody else that's on this mission as well.
we can't do it by ourselves. And that realization you had, same realization I had. I kept trying to do deals by ourselves. We could only do small deals. And it
Mm.
wasn't until we started working with others and raising more money that we could do big projects. And so it's even a big project, what are you doing? 500 homes, 600 homes, 1,000 homes is still a drop in the bucket. A drop in the bucket. And so we need lots of people who are willing to either devote their time, money, attention, support in some way to impact investing, creating more affordable housing, more support systems in a way that generates a return, like you did, 25% per year. Fantastic.
Mm.
Fantastic. So, John, as we wrap up here, people who have been listening to you and are like, I want to support her, how do they find you?
Well, I'm very vocal on LinkedIn, so they can find me there. Just do a search for Dionne Payn, Dionnepayn. And my company is called Women for Homes. I have a website which is www.womenforhomes.com, and it's four as in the number four. And yeah, I've also have the book Ethical Property Investing, which is available on Amazon as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being on the show. Hopefully people listen, were inspired by you. I was, and inspired enough to invest with you, for you, and help you bring as many units and homes to families as possible. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much.
If this episode shifted your thinking, then share it with someone bold. And remember, capital is a tool. Use it to build a world you are proud to live in.